David never expected that one strange letter could change his life. He found it in his mailbox one evening, written on thick, silver-colored paper. There was no sender's name, no address, only one short message. We invite you for dinner. Come alone, come tonight. Trust us. At first he thought it was a prank. Who sends letters like this in the modern world? But the handwriting was neat and old-fashioned, almost beautiful. Something about the words pulled him in. He felt curiosity growing stronger than his fear. David was a lonely man. He had no close family, few friends, and most nights he ate alone at his small apartment. Maybe that is why the idea of a dinner invitation, even a strange one, felt exciting. He told himself, what's the worst that could happen? Maybe it's some social experiment, or maybe someone really wants me there. So he decided to go. The house was far outside the city at the end of a quiet road surrounded by tall, dark trees. As David walked up the stone path, he noticed the house was not old, not broken. It was clean, bright, almost too perfect. Lights glowed warmly from the windows. The air smelled of flowers, but there was no garden outside. Already things felt unnatural. He knocked on the large wooden door. It opened slowly, without a sound. Standing there was a woman, with soft eyes and a warm smile. "Welcome, David," she said in a calm voice, as if she had been waiting for him. David froze. How does she know my name? He had never seen her before, but her smile was kind, motherly, almost comforting. She stepped aside and gestured for him to enter. Inside, the house looked normal at first. Paintings on the walls, a large dining table, soft carpets. But when David looked closer, he saw strange details. The paintings showed stars and galaxies, not landscapes or people. The chairs were shaped a little differently, as if made for bodies not quite human. The woman guided him into the dining room. A tall man, dressed neatly, stood to greet him. His handshake was firm but cold, too cold for human skin. Two children sat at the table, a boy and a girl, giggling as they watched David with bright, glowing eyes. Their laughter sounded cheerful, yet it carried a strange echo, like two voices speaking at once. David smiled nervously. "Thank you for inviting me. You are our special guest," the father said. His voice was deep and polite, but it had a rhythm that felt strange, like he was practicing human speech rather than speaking naturally. David sat down at the long table. Plates were already set, covered with lids. The smell of food filled the air, rich and heavy, though David could not recognize any of it. He felt his stomach twist with both hunger and fear. The mother placed a hand gently on his shoulder. "You must be hungry," she said softly. "Eat, and you will feel stronger." Her touch was warm now, almost human. David forced a smile, though inside his heart beat faster. When the lids were lifted, David's eyes widened. The food did not look normal. The meat shimmered as if it were alive, pulsing faintly with light. The vegetables twisted slightly on the plate, curling as though they had nerves. He swallowed hard. The children giggled again, whispering to each other in a language David did not understand. Their glowing eyes never left him. He picked up his fork, pretending to taste the food. He brought a small piece near his lips, but dropped it quickly, hiding it under his napkin. The father watched him closely but said nothing. The room grew strangely quiet. Only the sound of breathing, slow and heavy, filled the air. Trying to break the silence, David said, "It's very kind of you to invite me. I wasn't expecting—" The father interrupted gently. "It is rare for us to share a meal with your kind. Tonight is special. Your kind." The words echoed in David's head. His blood ran cold. He wanted to ask what they meant, but the mother's eyes met his. Her look was sharp now, though her smile never faded. She raised her glass, slowly, and said, "To our guest." The family all lifted their glasses in unison, moving too perfectly, too synchronized. David hesitated, then raised his own glass with shaking hands. "To our guest," they repeated, their voices blending in a strange harmony. David drank, though the liquid burned his throat with a metallic taste. He coughed, but the family only smiled wider. The children leaned closer, whispering again, their words strange but their eyes filled with excitement. David felt like a rabbit at a dinner table full of wolves, smiling while waiting to be eaten. He tried to stay calm. "It's just dinner," he told himself. "Just eat, stay polite, and leave soon." But deep inside, he knew this was no ordinary family. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. And as he glanced at the mother again, he noticed her smile twitching, as if she was hiding something far darker than simple kindness. David sat stiffly in his chair, trying to ignore the way the food twitched on his plate. The mother leaned closer, her soft voice breaking the silence. "Please," she said, "try the main dish. It is made with great care. For you." Her tone was warm, but David felt pressure behind it. He forced a nod, picked up his fork, and pretended to cut into the glowing meat. The texture was strange. It resisted the knife-like muscle that was still alive. When he pressed harder, the meat shivered as if it felt pain. David's throat tightened. "What kind of food is this?" The children burst into laughter, almost as if they knew his fear. Their giggles echoed strangely around the room. The father lifted his glass again. "A guest must eat," he said, smiling politely. His teeth looked normal but too sharp when the light caught them. "Our tradition demands it." David gave a nervous laugh. "Maybe later. I had a snack before coming. I'm not that hungry yet." The mother tilted her head. For the first time, her smile looked less friendly and more calculating. "Strange," she said softly. "Humans are always hungry." The word humans echoed again. It was the second time. David shifted in his chair, heart racing. "They don't see me as one of them, they see me as something else." The family began to eat their food happily. The father cut the glowing meat into perfect slices and chewed with slow delight. The children scooped up wriggling vegetables, slurping them like noodles. Each bite made soft popping sounds, as though something was bursting inside. David looked away quickly, pretending to sip his drink. The metallic taste burned his throat again, but he kept drinking just to hide his shaking hands. The mother watched him closely, not touching her plate. She only smiled, her glowing eyes never blinking. "So, David," she said finally, her voice sweet. "Tell us about your life. Do you live with family? Do you have people who wait for you at home?" David's mind raced. It felt like a trap. Why would they ask such personal questions? He tried to stay calm. "I live alone," he admitted slowly. "No family nearby." The children clapped their hands, almost celebrating. The father gave a satisfied nod. The mother's smile grew wider, but her eyes darkened. David quickly added, "But I have friends. They always check on me. If I don't return, they'll worry." The father's expression twitched just for a moment. His smile remained, but his eyes narrowed. The children went silent, their glowing eyes fixed on David like hunters spotting prey. The air grew heavy. The ticking of a clock somewhere in the house grew louder, though David had not seen any clock on the walls. The father leaned forward. "We are curious about humans," he said carefully. "Your fears, your limits, your taste." David's chest tightened. He forced a laugh. "Taste? You mean taste in food, right?" The children giggled again, this time in a whispery tone that sent chills down his spine. "Yes," the father said, but his voice carried another meaning, one that made David grip the edge of the table to stop his hands from shaking. Trying to distract them, David asked, "And what about you? Where are you from? This house is very unusual." The mother leaned closer, her face still smiling but her eyes sharp. "Far away," she whispered. "Too far for you to understand." The room went silent again. Only the faint sound of the strange food moving on the plates filled the air. David pushed his fork into the glowing meat once more, trying to pretend bravery. But before he could lift it, the food twitched violently and then went still. The children squealed with laughter. The father nodded, as if satisfied with the reaction. "It knows you are afraid," he said calmly. David froze. "It knows?" The father placed his fork down neatly. "Yes. The food lives until we take it. It feels us. It remembers." David's stomach turned. He looked at his plate again and swore the meat pulsed faintly, as if a tiny heartbeat throbbed inside it. Mother finally touched her food. She picked up a small glowing fruit and placed it between her fingers. It writhed like a worm before she popped it into her mouth and chewed slowly. Her smile never faded. "You must understand, David," she said gently. "We offer you more than a meal. We offer you knowledge, power. But first you must show trust. You must eat what we eat." Her words pressed against him like invisible hands. He felt trapped. David forced another nervous laugh. "I think I'll wait for dessert. I always like dessert more." The children groaned, disappointed. The father frowned slightly. But the mother, she only stared. Her smile widened unnaturally, stretching too far across her face. "Dessert?" she whispered. "Yes, dessert will be very special." David shifted in his chair, his body tense. He realized something terrifying. This was no normal dinner. He was not here as a guest. He was here for something else, something darker. The family's polite faces, their glowing eyes, their strange questions, it all pointed to one truth. This was not dinner with a family. This was a ritual, and he was at the center of it. David sat at the table, the strange meal still untouched on his plate. The children whispered and giggled in their strange, echoing voices, their glowing eyes fixed on him as if he were more entertainment than guest. The father's polite smile never moved, and the mother's gaze stayed locked on David, studying him like he was a puzzle to be solved. Finally, the silence broke. "So, David," the father began, his voice calm but heavy, "we must know more about you. Do you live alone? Does anyone check on you often?" The words sounded casual, but David heard the weight behind them. His heart skipped. Why are they asking this? Why do they care if someone is waiting for me? He forced a smile, trying to sound relaxed. "I live alone, yes, but I have friends nearby. They always check on me. I'm not unnoticed." The children stopped giggling. Their faces grew serious, their glowing eyes narrowing. The father gave a slow nod, and the mother's smile twitched slightly. "How interesting," the mother whispered. The children leaned closer across the table. The boy asked in a soft, almost sweet voice, "Do you sleep deeply, human? Or do you wake up when someone enters your room?" David's fork froze halfway to his mouth. He set it down slowly. He tried to laugh, but his voice cracked. "Why would you ask me something like that?" The girl tilted her head, her hair falling unnaturally still, like it wasn't real hair at all. "Because some humans sleep too deeply. They never wake up when it matters most." David's throat went dry. He sipped his drink again, the metallic taste burning down his throat. The father leaned forward now, his voice smoother than before. "Tell us, David, what do humans fear the most? Darkness, death, being alone?" David shifted uncomfortably. "Everyone has different fears," he said quickly. "Some are afraid of losing loved ones. Some are afraid of pain. Some are afraid of the unknown." The father's eyes glowed brighter and his smile widened as if those answers pleased him. "Yes, fear of the unknown. That is the greatest one. You humans are curious, but curiosity leads you into places you cannot return from." The words sank into David's chest like stones. The mother finally spoke again, her voice low and strangely soothing. "And what about you, David? What do you fear most?" Her question cut through him. He wanted to lie, but her glowing eyes seemed to look straight into his soul. He felt like she already knew the answer. "I fear being powerless," he whispered without thinking, "being trapped, not able to escape." The room went silent. The children stared at him without blinking. The father's smile froze. and the mother's expression changed. Her eyes darkened, her smile fading into something more serious. Powerless, she repeated softly, almost to herself. David realized he had said too much. He tried to shift the focus. What about you? Do you fear anything? The father chuckled. The children giggled. But the mother didn't answer. She only stared at him with an intensity that made his skin crawl. Finally, the father said, "We do not fear, we remember. There is a difference." David frowned. "Remember what?" The father leaned back in his chair. "The taste of battles, the silence of worlds we have visited, the last words of those who sat where you sit now." David's blood ran cold. He gripped the edge of his chair to stop his hands from shaking. Others sat here before me. The children broke the tension with a game. They started tapping the table in rhythm, chanting softly in their strange echo voices. At first it sounded playful, but soon David realized the words formed patterns, almost like a ritual chant. Alone he came, alone he stays, alone he leaves, or alone he pays. The rhyme chilled David to his bones. "What are they saying?" he asked nervously. The father only smiled. "Children enjoy games. Do not think too much of it." But David could see it in the mother's eyes. The words were not just a game, they were a warning. Trying to steady himself, David asked, "Why did you invite me? Why me, of all people?" The father answered smoothly, "Because you were ready. You walked into the unknown without being forced. You followed the call." "The call?" David repeated. The mother leaned closer now, her face inches from his. Her voice was a whisper but carried the weight of thunder. "You felt it. The letter did not reach every door. It reached yours. Because you were chosen." David's heart pounded in his chest. Chosen. For what? The father tapped the table gently, signaling the children to stop their chant. Then he looked at David with eyes that seemed to pierce through the air. "Tell us, David. If you could change one thing in your human life, just one, what would it be?" David hesitated. "Why does that matter?" The father's smile grew sharper. "Because the answer tells us if you are worthy." The children leaned forward, waiting eagerly. The mother tilted her head, her smile returning, though it looked less human now. David swallowed hard. "I would change the fact that I am alone. I want connection. I don't want to be forgotten." The family went silent again. The father's glowing eyes flashed. The children froze, and the mother slowly placed her hand on David's. Her skin was too smooth, too warm, and yet her touch carried a strange power. She leaned in and whispered, almost lovingly, "Then you will never be alone again." David's breath caught in his throat. He wanted to pull away, but her grip tightened slightly, holding him in place. The father and children smiled together, their faces eerily alike in that moment. David realized then that the conversation had not been casual. Every question was a test. Every answer he gave tied him deeper into their strange game, and as the mother's glowing eyes locked onto his, he knew something terrifying. This was not a dinner. This was a judgment. The dinner table grew quieter after the strange questions. The father leaned back in his chair, watching David with eyes that seemed to glow brighter in the dim light. The children whispered to each other again, their voices overlapping in a way that made David's skin crawl. The mother, however, kept her soft hand on his, her smile calm but heavy with unspoken meaning. David's nerves were on fire. He felt trapped. The food pulsed on his plate. The air felt too heavy, and every word from this family carried secrets he did not understand. "I need a moment," David finally said, forcing a polite smile. "Restroom?" The mother's head tilted. For a second it looked as if she might refuse, but then she nodded, her smile returning. "Down the hall, first door to the left." David stood quickly, trying not to look as if he was escaping. He walked down the hall, each step echoing louder than the last. The walls were decorated with pictures, but not of people. They showed strange landscapes, twisted planets under alien skies, and creatures with too many limbs. When he reached the first door, David paused. Something inside him whispered, "Not this one." He turned instead to the second door a little further down the hall. Unlike the others, it was locked. The handle was made of dark metal and had small glowing symbols carved into it, symbols that seemed to shift when he looked too long. David leaned closer. He could hear something faint from the other side. At first, he thought it was the hum of machinery, but then he froze. It was voices. Human voices, muffled, weak, crying. David's blood ran cold. He pressed his ear against the door. He could hear whispers, sobs, and a faint banging as if someone inside was trying to get out. "Help. Help us." The sound stabbed straight into his chest. He pulled back quickly, panic rising. There are people in there, trapped, alive. Suddenly, the hallway grew colder. David turned around, and the mother was standing behind him. She had moved silently without a sound. Her eyes glowed brighter now, and her smile was gone. "That door," she said softly, "is not for you." David stumbled back, his heart pounding. "What's in there? I heard—" The mother raised a finger to her lips. "Shh." Her voice was calm, but there was sharpness in it like a knife wrapped in silk. "Some doors should never be opened." David swallowed hard. He wanted to shout, to demand answers, but the look in her eyes froze him. For the first time, her warmth was gone. Her gaze was cold, almost predatory. The mother stepped closer, her presence pressing against him. "Curiosity," she whispered, "is both your strength and your weakness. Humans always look where they should not. That is why you are chosen. That is why you are in danger." David forced himself to speak. "Danger? From who? From you?" The mother's smile returned, slow and deliberate. But it didn't reach her eyes. "You are safe," she said softly, "as long as you obey." Her hand brushed the door handle for a brief moment. The glowing symbols pulsed brighter, as if alive, and then dimmed again when she stepped away. "Go back to the table," she said, her voice suddenly firmer. "The others are waiting." David's body shook as he returned to the dining room. He sat down, trying to appear calm, though his heart was racing. The children stared at him with knowing smiles, as if they already guessed where he had gone. The father raised an eyebrow but said nothing. The mother returned to her seat, her smile perfectly restored, as though nothing had happened. David wanted to scream. He wanted to ask them what was behind that locked door, but the mother's words echoed in his mind. Some doors should never be opened. The dinner continued, but David barely heard their voices. His thoughts were trapped in the hallway with the muffled cries behind that door. He could still hear the faint whisper, "Help us." The father's voice finally broke his thoughts. "Did you enjoy your walk, David?" David blinked, forcing a nod. "Yes, just what I needed." The father's smile widened. "Good. We cannot have our guest feeling uncomfortable." The children giggled again, repeating softly, "Uncomfortable, uncomfortable," their voices overlapping like an echo chamber. David glanced at the mother. She was eating calmly now, as though nothing had happened in the hallway. But when their eyes met, David noticed something. Her smile was the same, her posture perfect, but her eyes carried a secret, a conflict. For just a second he saw a flicker of something almost human, like guilt or sorrow. Then it was gone. The father lifted his glass. "To secrets," he said suddenly. The family raised their glasses together. David hesitated, then followed. "Secrets," they repeated in perfect unison. David's hand trembled as he drank. He understood the message now. This house was full of secrets. The family was hiding something terrible. And the locked door in the hallway was the darkest secret of all. He had heard the truth with his own ears. Humans were inside, crying, trapped, and if he stayed any longer, he feared he might become one of them. The dining room lights flickered once just for a second, as if the house itself had taken a breath. David sat frozen in his chair, every muscle stiff. The strange food still glowed faintly on his plate, untouched. The father kept his calm, polite smile. The children whispered to each other in their eerie twin voices. But it was the mother who held David's full attention. Her eyes. They didn't just glow anymore. They pulsed. Soft at first, then brighter, as though something inside her was waking up. David looked down quickly, pretending to sip from his glass, but the metallic liquid burned his throat again. His hands shook as he set it down. "Are you uncomfortable, David?" the mother asked softly. Her voice was still warm, still kind, but now it felt heavy, pressing into his chest like invisible hands. David forced a smile. "I'm fine. Just adjusting." The children giggled, their echo voices overlapping like broken music. The father leaned forward, folding his hands neatly. "Adjusting is good," the father said. "Not all humans adjust so quickly. Most break." David's blood ran cold. He opened his mouth to respond, but the mother suddenly stood. Her movements were too smooth, too silent. She walked around the table slowly, circling behind David. He felt her presence at his back, the air colder, where she moved. Her hand rested gently on his shoulder. "You are strong," she whispered near his ear. "But strength is not enough. Trust is needed too." Her fingers tightened slightly, not painfully, but with inhuman steadiness. David's heart raced. He wanted to pull away, but his body refused. Then it happened. Her smile slipped. Her warm mask cracked, revealing something beneath. Her skin shimmered faintly, as if another layer hid beneath the human shape. The glow from her eyes spread across her face, tracing faint lines under her skin, like rivers of light. David's breath caught in his throat. The children clapped their hands, laughing. "Show him! Show him!" they chanted, their voices echoing like two in one. The father didn't stop them. His polite smile only grew sharper, watching David carefully as though testing his reaction. The mother leaned down until her glowing eyes were inches from David's. "You came into our home," she whispered. "You sat at our table. You gave us your fears, your truths. Now you must see ours." Her skin rippled. For a moment, her face flickered between human and something else. Something alien. Her mouth widened slightly, teeth sharp and too many. Her pupils thinned into vertical slits, glowing brighter. David's body stiffened. His instincts screamed at him to run, but he couldn't move. Then, just as quickly, she smoothed her features again. The human mask returned. The warm, motherly smile was back, but David had seen it. The mask was not who she was. She stepped back slowly, her hand leaving his shoulder. "Do not be afraid," she said softly, her smile perfect again. "This is who I am. This is who we are." David swallowed hard. His voice shook. Why show me this?" The father finally spoke, his voice low and steady. "Because you are not here to eat, David. You are here to be eaten, or—" He paused, eyes glinting. "To become part of us." The children laughed louder now, their small teeth flashing sharper than before. They bit into the wriggling vegetables with glee, juices spilling down their chins like glowing nectar. Their echo voices rang out in a strange chant. "Join us. Join us, join us." David's stomach twisted. He looked at the mother, searching for any trace of humanity, any reason to believe she was different from them. And strangely, he found it. For just a flicker, her smile faltered, her eyes softened. There was something else hidden deep inside her glow, something like conflict. "You don't have to fear me," she said almost gently. "Not if you choose, not if you trust." David's voice trembled. "And if I don't?" The mother's smile froze again. Her eyes darkened. She leaned close, her whisper colder now. Then you will not leave this table alive." The father nodded once, confirming her words. The children fell silent, watching David with wide, glowing eyes. The air grew heavier, as if the walls themselves leaned in. David's chest tightened. He was cornered. His mind raced. He could try to run, but the locked door, the muffled human voices, the mother's alien power, where could he go? And yet there was something strange about her, something that separated her from the father and the children. She had shown him her true face. She had revealed her power. But she had also hesitated. She had whispered almost, like she wanted him to survive. David caught her eyes again. In that glow he saw not only hunger but something deeper, regret. The father raised his glass once more. "It is time," he said calmly. The children cheered. "Time, time, time." David's pulse thundered in his ears. The mother looked at him silently, her glowing eyes holding his, her lips pressed into a thin line, and then so quietly that the others couldn't hear, she whispered into his mind, not with her voice, but with something deeper. "When the moment comes, run." David's chest rose and fell quickly as the words echoed inside his head. "When the moment comes, run." It wasn't spoken aloud. It wasn't even whispered. It was planted directly into his thoughts, like a secret only he and the mother shared. He dared not look at her, but he felt her glowing eyes still watching. The father lifted his glass again, smiling politely as if nothing had happened. The children clapped their hands, chanting softly in their twin voices. David tried to breathe slowly, but fear squeezed him tight. Was she warning me? Was she helping me? Or was this another trick? The father spoke calmly. "Our meal is not yet finished. Dessert must come. Dessert is always special." The children giggled and clapped again. "Dessert! Dessert!" David's stomach twisted. He didn't want to know what dessert meant in this house. The mother stood and disappeared into the kitchen. David watched her leave, noticing again how her movements were silent, her steps unnaturally smooth. The father and children kept their eyes fixed on him, smiling too perfectly. David tried to fill the silence. "So, what exactly is dessert?" The father's grin widened. "You will see. It is tradition that dessert is shared. No guest leaves without it." David forced a small laugh. "Sounds delicious." The children leaned closer, their glowing eyes bright. "It is more than delicious," the girl whispered. "It changes you." David's skin crawled. He wanted to run now, bolt for the front door and never look back. But he remembered the locked hallway, the glowing symbols, the muffled human voices crying for help. He couldn't leave without answers. The mother returned with a tray. On it sat a covered bowl that glowed faintly from within, light spilling through the cracks of the lid. She set it in the middle of the table. The children cheered. The father leaned forward eagerly, but the mother's eyes, they flicked to David for the briefest second, and in that glance he saw it again. Conflict. She lifted the lid. Inside the bowl were small, glowing orbs. They pulsed like hearts, each one beating softly with light. The children reached eagerly, grabbing them with their small hands and biting into them like fruit. Glowing liquid spilled across their lips as they laughed. The father picked one up, chewing with delight. The mother pushed the bowl gently toward David. "Your turn," she said softly. David stared. His stomach churned. Every instinct screamed at him not to touch it. But the father's voice pressed like steel. "A guest must always share dessert." David hesitated. His hands shook as he reached for one of the glowing orbs. It was warm in his palm, almost alive. He felt it pulse as though it recognized his touch. "Eat," the father said firmly. The children chanted, "Eat, eat, eat." David brought it closer to his lips, but at the last second, the mother placed her hand gently on his wrist. Her eyes locked with his, and again her voice slipped into his mind. "Do not eat. Hold it. When the lights go out, crush it." David's heart raced. He nodded faintly, pretending it was just hesitation. He raised the orb to his mouth but didn't bite. Instead, he pretended to chew, lowering his head so they couldn't see clearly. The children clapped with glee, believing he had eaten. The father gave a slow nod of approval. The mother's smile widened, but this time David understood. It wasn't the false perfect smile she gave the others. It was different, secret, meant only for him. The father leaned back, satisfied. Good. Soon you will feel the change. David forced a laugh. I think I'll need a moment again. Excuse me. The father's smile thinned. The children frowned, but the mother spoke quickly. Let him breathe. Humans take time. The father studied her for a moment, then nodded. Very well. David stood, clutching the glowing orb tightly in his fist. He walked back down the hall, his steps heavy with fear. He stopped near the locked door. The muffled voices inside grew clearer now, as though they sensed him close. Help. Please. Don't leave us. David's throat tightened. He looked at the glowing orb in his hand. Crush it, she had said, when the lights go out. But the lights were still on. He turned back. The mother was standing at the end of the hall, her silhouette framed in the dining room light. Her glowing eyes locked onto his. She gave the faintest nod. Suddenly the lights flickered. Once, twice, then darkness. The house went silent. David's heart thundered. He crushed the orb in his hand. It burst with a flash of white light filling the hall. The locked door trembled. The glowing symbols across its surface flared brightly, then cracked like broken glass. The muffled voices inside grew louder, shouts now, desperate cries of hope. The father's deep voice roared from the dining room. What have you done? The children screamed, their echo voices turning sharp and violent. But the mother remained silent. David pulled at the door as the glowing cracks spread. The lock shattered, and the door swung open with a rush of cold air. Inside, shadowy figures stumbled forward, thin, pale humans with hollow eyes, their wrists bound with strange glowing cords. They looked at David as if he were their savior. Run, one of them gasped. Before they take you too. Behind David, heavy footsteps thundered closer. The father's voice was no longer calm or polite. It was monstrous. The children shrieked with laughter and rage, rushing toward the hall. David turned back, gripping the broken remains of the glowing orb in his hand. His only thought screamed through his mind, run. And in that moment, through the chaos, he saw the mother standing still. Her glowing eyes were not on her family. They were on him. And silently, with her lips barely moving, she mouthed the same word he had heard inside his head. Run! The hallway exploded with noise. The freed prisoners stumbled into the light, their weak cries mixing with the screams of the alien children and the thunderous roar of the father. David's pulse pounded in his ears. The house that once seemed too quiet was now alive with chaos. Shadows twisted on the walls as the father's heavy footsteps shook the floorboards. Bring him back, the father bellowed. His polite tone was gone, replaced by something deep and monstrous. The children raced forward, their glowing eyes blazing like fire. Their small bodies moved too fast, darting across the hallway like predators. Their laughter was no longer playful. It was sharp, cruel, a promise of pain. David grabbed the arm of one of the weak humans. Come on, he shouted. We have to move. But before they could run, the house itself reacted. The walls pulsed faintly with light, the same glowing symbols appearing across them. The air grew heavier, as though the house was alive and trying to hold them in. The father appeared at the end of the hall, his human mask slipping. His skin rippled like liquid, his shape shifting into something larger, more terrifying. His smile stretched impossibly wide, rows of sharp teeth flashing in the dim light. You cannot leave, he growled. You were chosen. You belong to us. David's heart raced. He pulled the glowing shard of the broken orb from his pocket and held it out like a weapon. The white glow pulsed again, pushing back the father's darkness for just a moment. The children hissed, shielding their glowing eyes. The father stepped back slightly, his teeth bared, and then, there she was, the mother. She stood between David and her family, her glowing eyes fixed not on him, but on them. For the first time, she didn't smile. Her expression was fierce, defiant. "Enough," she said. Her voice was sharp, full of power. The father roared, "You betray us!" The children screeched in unison, "Traitor, traitor!" But the mother didn't move. She raised her hand slowly, and the glowing symbols on the walls flickered, weakening. The heaviness in the air lifted slightly. The humans gasped, able to move again. David's eyes widened. She was helping him. "Go," she whispered, her voice slipping into his mind again. "The door is open. Take them and run." David turned. At the far end of the hall, the front door stood ajar. A faint breeze pushed through, carrying the smell of night air and freedom. The humans stumbled forward, but David hesitated. He looked back at the mother. "Why?" he whispered. "Why are you helping me?" For a moment, her glowing eyes softened. Her face flickered again, half human, half alien, caught between two worlds. "Because I remember what it was like to be powerless," she said softly. "Go before I cannot protect you." The father roared again, his monstrous form growing larger, his claws scraping against the walls. The children leapt toward David, their sharp teeth flashing. David crushed the glowing shard in his hand one last time. A blinding light burst out, throwing the children backward. The humans cried out, shielding their eyes, but David pushed them toward the door. "Run," he shouted. They burst out into the night air, stumbling across the cold grass. The forest loomed around them, dark and silent. But the fresh air felt like salvation after the suffocating house. Behind them, the father's roar shook the trees. The children's shrieks echoed like broken glass. The house glowed faintly, its walls pulsing as if alive with rage. But David didn't stop. He pulled the humans along, their weak bodies barely able to keep up. He didn't know where they were going, only that they had to keep moving. When they finally reached the edge of the forest, David turned back. The house stood glowing faintly in the distance like a lantern in the dark, and there, at the doorway, stood the mother. She didn't chase them. She didn't call out. She only watched. Her glowing eyes locked on David's one last time. Her lips moved silently, forming words only he could understand. "Come back when you are ready. Your fate is with us." David's chest tightened. He wanted to scream, to demand answers, but the forest pulled him away. The humans tugged at his arms, desperate to escape. He turned and ran again, his mind a storm of fear and questions. Hours later, when the sun began to rise, they finally stopped. The weak survivors collapsed on the ground, breathing hard. Some of them cried softly, others stared blankly, too broken to speak. David sat apart, his hands shaking. He should have felt relief. He had escaped. He had freed others. He was alive. But all he could think about was her, the mother. Her eyes, her voice in his mind, her secret choice to help him. Was she protecting him? Or preparing him for something far worse? The survivors gathered around him, asking what to do next. But David had no answer. His thoughts were trapped back in that glowing house with the woman who was not fully human, not fully alien, and not fully his enemy. He looked at the rising sun and whispered to himself, "This isn't over. She let me go because she wants me to come back." And deep inside, David knew the terrifying truth: he would return. Not because he wanted to, but because part of him already belonged to her.